CSS margins, now as I mentioned before, margins allows us to separate the elements, right? Now remember this, margins do not act as a fixed buffer between elements, but it ensures a minimum separation between elements, right? The margins of adjacent elements overlaps, and then the biggest margin is the gap that is displayed between the elements. That's something you need to be remembered, okay? So the margin properties are similarly like padding and the border properties. You can specify the properties in top, right, bottom, left way, right? It goes like a clockwise. So top, and then the right, and then the bottom and the left, right? It's in that way, right? So I can specify the margin for an element, okay? So here in this example I have specified a margin for paragraph in top, right, bottom, left method in a four way method. That means, okay. So I can set the individual margins if I needed. For example, if I can have only top margin, right? I can say, okay, margin top, right, or margin bottom, or margin left, margin right. I can set individually like this. So the like the padding and the borders, I can have a single value, right? For example, I can say margin for px. So if I just put the single value, margin, it applies to all sides, right? Remember that. Now that actually rule applies to the borders and padding as well. If I specify only single value, it applies to all sides. But if I specify two values, right? So the first value sets the top and the bottom margin, and then the second value, this value, apply to the left and the right margins, right? So I can specify one single margin method or single value method or two value method. If I have two value, then this is how it applies, or I can use four value method, right? So if I use four value method, it goes like a clockwise: top, right, bottom, left, right? Top, right, bottom, left. So that's how I put the margin. So this rule actually applies to the padding and then the other border element as well. So we can use the auto margin value to center an element, right? For example, it's a table margin left, auto margin right, auto. So if I put like that, so it will actually center an element. So and then if I have two elements with margins, the margin is a minimum separation distance between the elements, as you know. For example, if I had two elements like two paragraphs, for example, so I set the paragraph for this one margin 10 pixel and here the margin 4 pixel. So the distance between these two elements actually like the highest one, right? 10 pixel, the biggest of the margin set, right? Then the CSS padding. CSS, now the padding is, as I mentioned before, is placed between the border and the content. It actually stops the text from being squished into next to the border, right? So that's why we have a padding, right? So as before, we can group the multiple padding or multiple properties in a single form like this. So I can specify the padding, top padding or the right padding, bottom padding and the left padding, right? So like margin and the borders, we can actually use 1, 2 or 4 value methods, right? Padding 4 pixels says, right, 4px applies to all sides. if I have two values, the first value is the top value, and then the top and the bottom, and then the second value is the left and the right. Okay, so that's how it applies. So can specify padding for individual sides if I need, right? Just specify the top right or the bottom or the left. I can use a pixel or the percentage as well.